via Zoom to convene a public hearing on Bill 24-0653, the Period Equity, Writing, and Injustice of District Residents Act of 2022. This hearing is streaming live and is being recorded on the committee's YouTube channel named HEA Committee. It is also live on DCC TV Channel 13 and the Council website. Bill 24-653, the Period Equity, Writing, and Injustice of District Residents, commonly known as Period Act of 2022, was introduced by Council members Pinto, Louis George, Trayon White, Charles Allen, Robert White, Christine Henderson, Vincent Gray, Alyssa Silverman, Anita Bonds, Rianne Nadeau, Mary Shea, and Kenyon McDuffie on the 2nd of February 2022. And this legislation would require the provision of free period products in district buildings and government operated spaces to alleviate the burden of period poverty and protect the dignity of all administrating people. First, this bill would require that district agencies provide free period products in bathrooms of all government operated buildings, as well as government owned buildings being leased by private entities. Second, it would require entities that have been awarded human care agreements with the district, including shelters and congregate care facilities, to provide free period products to visitors and clients. Third, it would require the entities to provide a dispenser with free period products in all women and gender neutral bathrooms. If no gender neutral bathrooms are available, they must provide period products in at least one men's bathroom and provide a sign in other men's bathrooms indicating where period products are located. Finally, it would meet the various needs of administrating individuals by making both tampons and pads available. The inability to access period products can create serious health consequences. Women, transgender men, and non-binary people who lack access to menstrual products are more likely to reuse products or use products for too long, which puts those individuals at higher risk for infection and other conditions that require medical care. This bill would reduce these health risks for district residents and visitors by providing free period products in public buildings and facilities serving vulnerable populations. I look forward to hearing from all of the public and government witnesses regarding this significant bill, and I ask that each keep their remarks to 3 minutes to allow all witnesses the opportunity to be heard today. With that being said, I want to note that the entire written testimony will be a part of the record. So if you have not submitted your written testimony, please email it to housing@dccouncil.gov. And at this time, I'd like to recognize my colleague, Councilmember Pinto, and okay, want to make sure, Councilmember Pinto, and ask her if she would like to make opening remarks. Councilmember Pinto is the author of this legislation. Councilmember Pinto.
Well, good afternoon. Thank you so much, Chairwoman Bonds, for holding this hearing today. I am really thrilled that we are holding this hearing today on the Period Equity, Writing, and Injustice of District Residents Act of 2022, also referred to as the Period Act. And I'm especially thrilled that we're doing this on International Day of the Girl. This is the second period equity bill that I've introduced. The Period Act expands upon the Expanding Student Access to Period Products Act by not only requiring free period products in school bathrooms, but in all women and gender neutral bathrooms in district government buildings. A few years ago, I was at the grocery store when a woman approached me and asked if I would buy her a box of tampons. She was experiencing homelessness and they didn't have any available in the shelter she was staying in. And this woman who was in need, and so many like her, have a basic human need for menstrual hygiene products, but could not afford them. We know that women, girls, transgender men, and others who menstruate need access to these products each month, and that cost is a huge barrier for many people, which can lead to missed school, work, or other problematic outcomes. DC students fought for access to menstrual products in their schools. I'm thrilled that last year my bill to provide menstrual products for free in all of our schools was passed and funded and is being implemented this year. We also required that our health curriculum standards be updated so that all children can learn about menstruation. However, we knew we needed to go further. We needed to ensure that access to these products was free and available in all of our government spaces. The Period Act before us today requires that period products be provided in all DC government building bathrooms, including recreation centers, correctional facilities, district government office buildings, libraries, and shelters. This bill also requires any organization that has a human care contract with the city to include period products in their bathrooms. This will ensure that all of our shelters, even those that are not directly managed by the city, will provide period products. In buildings where there is not a gender neutral bathroom, period products must be provided in at least one men's bathroom, and signage must be posted in the other men's bathrooms indicating where users can find period products in the building. This is to ensure that transgender and non-binary residents have equal access to these products and don't have to search for them when they need them. I am really proud of the progress that we've made together to combat stigma surrounding menstruation. This is due in large part to the work of students across our city and across the country who refuse to participate in a culture that perpetuates shame about periods. Period products should be treated the same as toilet paper. We all walk into public spaces, and if we use the restroom, we expect there to be free toilet paper available. Why isn't the same true of menstrual products? Period products are a necessity for over half the population. And when menstruating people don't have access to period products, they can miss school and work and are at a higher risk of infection. So I hope that by passing the Period Act, we'll start to view period products as a right and not a luxury. You go into a bathroom in library, school, homeless shelter, DC jail, or any of our public spaces, you should not have to think twice about whether period products will be available. And once we make this a reality, my hope is that the private sector will begin to follow the district government's example. This bill is an opportunity for DC to be a leader in the country in combating period poverty and stigma. And so I'm really looking forward to hearing from our public witnesses today and continue working with you to ensure that all menstruating people living in or visiting the district are treated with dignity. So thank you very much, Chairwoman Bonds, for holding this hearing today and for your support.
Thank you very much for your remarks. We will move now to the first panel. And if staff would help me out and tell me who is here. I think I see Duggan and Karen. Do we have the full panel here by any chance?
It looks like we have everyone aside from our second panelist.
All right. All right. Well, we'll now hear first from Marcy Cameron. Welcome.
Morning. Good afternoon. My name is Marcy Karen. I'm a Ward 2 resident who works in Ward 3 at the UDC David A. Clark School of Law. I also am a menstruator with fibroids who has been caught without products and with unexpected flow more often than I can count. I'm testifying in my personal capacity to enthusiastically support the Period Act and want to commend Chair Bonds for holding this hearing and Councilmember Pinto for her leadership. I'm going to quickly make 3 points, and I refer you to written testimony that I was grateful to work on with 2 of my amazing law students, Stella Yue and Beth Brodsky. First, improving access to free and accessible menstrual products in the district addresses the reality that periods do not stop when we are in public or in public funded spaces. Both studies and shared experiences demonstrate that without access to safe menstrual management opportunities, people are likely to miss out on community events or public benefits, or risk harm from menstrual indignities, including impacts to physical and mental health, harassment, shame, and internalized fear. This is disproportionately true for menstruators living in poverty, for whom the cost of on-demand quality period products remains out of reach. And when you look at who's in poverty in our community, these barriers disproportionately exist for menstruators of color who also experience higher rates of and underdiagnosed menstruation-related conditions like endometriosis and PCOS that cause unexpected bleeding. Second, this bill does important work normalizing menstruation and addressing a range of needs. Menstruation is still taboo and unknown to many. I also honestly fear another wave of silence and misinformation surrounding menstruation in a post-Dobbs world, along with new concerns about menstrual tracking and privacy taking hold, given broad attacks on gender justice and the implicit connection between menstruation and reproduction. Passing this bill contributes to a powerful message that the council cares about both reproductive and menstrual justice, and that periods are not something to be ashamed of, and that people should be able to manage them with choice and bodily autonomy. And along those lines, I want to thank you for including the needs of menstruators with different sex characteristic and gender identities than my own. But it brings me to my 3rd point. After reviewing dozens of laws and proposals related to menstrual justice around the world, I encourage the council to go even further. Product access is important. To be effective, of course, this bill would require strong enforcement. Also, menstruation-related needs and what the government can do to address them expand well beyond product access. For example, the bill could explicitly acknowledge the importance of menstrual dignity, a concept that applies beyond products, in the text of the bill, as the council did in the school law. Relatedly, the bill's culture-changing work could go further by requiring the same soon-to-be-developed OSCE poster be provided wherever the district supplies products. This, along with a public awareness campaign related to rollout, could expand conversations and comfort levels talking about menstruation and how menstruation-related discrimination may already be protected under existing district laws. Finally, I encourage the council to consider an option to support menstruators with disabilities who may not be able to use dispensers and those that may need products to travel to a government function, even if products are available when they're there. I encourage you to look at Scotland's new law that allows postal delivery as an alternative to in-person collection. Thank you again for considering this bill and working to keep the district at the forefront of the menstrual justice movement.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Next, we'll hear from Hannah Taylor.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon.
Hi, how are you doing?
Doing well. How about yourself? So as mentioned, my name is Hannah Taylor, and I am currently a doctoral candidate studying menstrual activism and equity, and I am proud to support this bill, the Period Act of 2022. Recently, a nationwide survey of over 30,000 women showed that nearly 15% of menstruators have absenteeism during their periods. The presence of menstrual products in these facilities, as the bill grants, will grant the people who work there assuredness and comfort at their workspaces. Even still, as we know, employees of these buildings are not the only ones using their restrooms. An estimated 16.9 million people who menstruate in the US are living in poverty. And of those 16.9 million low-income menstruators, 2/3 could not consistently afford period products in the last year, forcing them to choose between health and hygiene and other basic needs like food every month. This bill will greatly reduce the burden of menstrual care on visitors by providing a safe and clean place for those who need it to take care of their bodies. Having menstrual products in the bathrooms of federal and government buildings will allow the menstruators who occupy these spaces to work more effectively, feel comfortable during their periods, and overall reduce stigma around menstruation. Passing this bill will be instrumental in shifting the conversation around menstrual health care product access in the United States. Menstrual equity is not just a health issue, but an issue of human rights and dignity. And this bill would set the tone for all governmental organizations to provide for their menstruating citizens in ways that reduce stigma, increase dignity, and change lives for the better. Thank you.
Oh my goodness, thank you very much for your testimony. Our next witness is Liz Dugan. Ms. Dugan, are you? Yes, I see that
Yep,
you are
I
here.
am here. I'm just getting my video turned on.
All right, thank you.
I apologize. I made sure this was working before and now it's not turning on. But I can go ahead and get started and just do it through audio. Apologize for that. I'm Liz Dugan. I'm the founder and executive director of Amenity Aid. We're based in Rhode Island. And I'm here to testify because of my unique experience with period poverty in the state of Rhode Island. We provide essential hygiene products to vulnerable populations through our network of shelters, schools, and community groups, similar to how the food bank distributes food. I established Amenity Aid in 2013 to address a huge unmet need in our state, the lack of access to hygiene products. Over the years, the need has grown and has been exacerbated by the pandemic and rising inflation. In fact, we are paying 10% more for pads and tampons compared to last year. We know what we are seeing here in our tiny state is just a small glimpse of a much problem in our nation. We provide products that are essential. This means not only are they basic human needs, but people cannot go without them and there are no substitutes available. Of all the products we provide, including shampoo, deodorant, and soap, by far the most essential are period supplies. If you are living in poverty, there is no government assistance to gain access to free period products. Both SNAP and WIC do not cover them. Your next option would be to visit a shelter, community center, or a food pantry. However, these organizations lack the funding to provide products and are forced to prioritize other basic needs. Only half of the partners in our network reported having a budget to buy essentials. Of those who did have money, they all reported that it was never enough. Without local support, your next stop is going to be a discount store where you can purchase 3 bars of soap or 1 pack of 8 tampons. For those of you who don't menstruate, that pack's only going to last you a couple days at most. Compare that to the shelf life of 3 bars of soap. This is the inequality that menstruators are currently facing in our country. Because of this, period products are the most requested item in our network of organizations. A school culture coordinator recently told me girls are going to the bathroom to stuff toilet paper in their underwear, then tying sweatshirts around their waist to hide the bleeding. Period poverty affects people of all ages who menstruate. It's a silent basic needs crisis that should not be happening in 2022. Passing the Period Act would bring us one step closer to closing the inequality gap. Based on my experience in Rhode Island, creating access to these products will help our most vulnerable populations. Providing products will eliminate the choice many are forced to make between choosing food or period products. It will also restore dignity by making them available and easily accessible in bathrooms without having to ask for assistance. With the passing of this bill, DC residents and visitors will face one last barrier to ensure their basic needs are met. For this reason, I am urgently asking the council to pass this legislation. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for your testimony as well. Our next witness is Nupa Huria. I hope I didn't butcher your name too badly.
No, that was fine. All right. Good afternoon, council members. My name is Nupa Huria. I'm a sophomore at Michigan State University, the Michigan Community Organizer for Period, an organization focused on fighting period poverty and stigma, and the lead advocate for Mission Menstruation at MSU, an organization focused on providing free period products to college students. Thank you, Councilmember Brooke Pinto, for introducing the Period Act of 2022, and thank you all for giving me the opportunity to testify in support of the bill. First, let me say that I'm very excited to see policymakers introducing and passing bills on the stigmatized issue. It just proves that menstrual equity is finally getting the attention it deserves. I will not reiterate the various statistics and health implications of period poverty in front of a council that, along with 5 states, pioneered the elimination of the tampon tax. I commend Councilmember Anita Bonds for introducing and the DC Council for passing that legislation back in 2016. Since then, 19 other states have eliminated the tampon tax. This district and 17 states have passed legislation to ensure free access to period products in schools. Several universities have installed free period product dispensers in campus buildings, and many states and cities have mandated access to free products in public buildings. Menstruators should not have to worry about where their next tampon or pad will come from. Access to these products should be a basic right, and there should be no stigma or shame around something as fundamental as menstruation. They should be available for free in every public restroom throughout the district, just like soap, toilet paper, and paper towels. By introducing this bill, DC Council has recognized that menstrual hygiene products are a necessity, not a luxury. Whether these free products are for menstruators who find themselves in an unexpected situation, or for those who cannot afford to purchase their own products, passing this legislation will help remove the stigma associated with menstruation and provide hygiene supplies to those who need them. Thank you again for giving me this opportunity, and I urge the council to pass this legislation. It'll be a huge leap forward for the global period movement and a true inspiration for many other cities.
Thank you very much for your testimony as well. I really appreciate hearing from you all, and I don't have to state it. I guess it's just obvious that I am with you 100% because this is such an important issue, and it's sometimes featured as, a small issue. So why are we getting upset about it? We're upset about it because it is about our human nature, and it's an opportunity to do what is right and just for our society. So I certainly appreciate hearing from you today. I just had one question. Should period products be of a certain quality, organic or toxin-free, or how do you look at it? What is your thinking? And this is to the panel, any one or all. Well,
I can
all
answer.
right. Okay.
Councilmember
Okay,
Vaughn.
Professor, please.
The short answer is it depends, right? Menstruators' bodies are different, right? And so the way that this has been handled in other jurisdictions is by having choice of products. Right now, the legislation talks about tampons and pads, but not all pads are the same and not all tampons are the same, just like not everyone's bodies are the same. And so to whatever extent possible, I'd encourage the council to consider community input and choice in what products are available. Some people do have allergies to commonly available products. We don't actually know what's in many of existing menstrual products without because there's no requirement to include disclose ingredients. And so you're raising an important point about ensuring accessibility. Some jurisdictions have also been environmentally conscious in their period equity bills, offering options without plastic applicators on tampons, for example, as an environmental conscious effort. And so I encourage you to look at the existing laws across the country that are cited in our written testimony, and whenever possible, to think about providing as many options and many choices to reflect the reality that periods are not the same for everyone.
No, I appreciate that. I suppose consumer products has not taken a look at our period products. And maybe that's something that we might need to inquire about, Councilmember Pinto, because it just seems to me it's a very fair issue that we should be on top of. I can see with the many different products in the drugstores, we could have as many as 8 or 10, and how do we know which, I guess we'll figure that out, but it is a concern. So I appreciate getting at least some feedback on that. Anyone else have any thoughts?
I would just say that I source period products on a large scale, so I'm happy to make introductions to suppliers that can help. There's a lot of women-owned businesses out there that do quality organic products, and they buy them or they price them really cheap for nonprofits or if they're going into school. So I'd be happy to share any resources.
All right, well, thank you. And thanks for getting your video on too. Thank you.
Sorry about that, I got to work.
That's great, that's great. No, we appreciate it. All right, anyone else or? Oh,
Sure, I
all right,
also wanted
sure.
to add, sorry, I just wanted to add that it would be great to also explore sustainability of products and just look at the intersectionality between this menstrual movement along with environmental justice, especially because that's also a big thing going on in today's world, and just figuring out how we can intertwine the two to bring benefits to both movements.
Thank you. I appreciate that comment. Thank you very much. I will now turn to my colleague. She may have a few questions. Councilmember Pinto.
Thank you so much, Chairwoman Bonds, and thank you to all of our witnesses on this panel, not only for testifying today, but for your work and leadership in this important space. And especially want to thank Marcy Karen, Professor Karen, for all of your help with this bill and your work with district students. I wanted to ask Ms. Dugan, if you're still here, you had talked about SNAP and WIC not covering menstrual products, and that continues to be very frustrating. In your experience, have you identified or have you seen anyone identify a reason for this or a misconception that's associated with period products that would lead to them not being covered in the way that basic food is?
Short answer is no. There's no reason why. There's no objections to it. It's just lack of collaboration. But I do know that's something that me and a lot of my peers across the country are strongly advocating for.
Okay, thank you. And I'm glad that there was a discussion with my colleague about the sustainability of these products and also having a clearer sense of what chemicals are in these products, as they can be really absorbed by the body. And so it's especially important to make sure that we're being conscientious of that. Councilor Bonds, one of the reasons we didn't include a specific brand or anything in this bill or the school's bill was to make sure that that process could still go through the procurement office as opposed to us kind of selecting a private company. But I do think it would be a great idea to continue the conversation about objectives that we're trying to accomplish with both natural ingredients, chemicals, the heart of the product, and also the sustainability concerns. Professor Karen, if you're still here, I was very interested to hear you talk about Scotland's approach. I know they've been a real leader on menstrual equity, about the post-service law and what that kind of looks like and how you're envisioning that would look in DC.
Sure. So Scotland's law just took effect a couple months ago, and so they are actually in the process of figuring some of this out still. And I'm very excited that I will be spending 6 months in Scotland to learn from all of them starting in January more about that, and look forward to coming back to the council with some ideas. The reason, as I understand it, that they allowed or required an option for postal delivery is because not everyone, right, has the ability to pick up products in the same fashion. Not everyone can express their needs in the same way. Not everyone has a caregiver with them if you're a person with a disability who menstruates at all times. And so this was a way for there to be someone else to help at a time when it's needed, to ensure that sort of the barrier is minimized. And so they use postal delivery as an option for that reason. If I recall correctly, and I will check and follow up if I'm wrong, they do allow some of the costs to be put onto the menstruator themselves for the delivery. I would not encourage the council to do that. But to the extent that cost is the concern, I believe that's how Scotland is addressing it. Generally speaking, Scotland's law, which is the first in the world that really offers a almost universal right to menstrual products, really thought about variety and really thought about what I was mentioning before in terms of recognizing that people's needs vary. And so they offered sort of consultation systems and other ways for members of the public to be involved and engaged in figuring out what's going on. They also had massive public education campaigns between their school access law and their period products law to make sure that people were ready, and now we're doing another massive campaign, right, with the rollout of this. And so I encourage you to look at them as a model, and I will gladly keep in touch with what I learn.
Fantastic, and congratulations for the program you're in. Okay, that's helpful. And Miss Taylor, if you're still here. Hannah Taylor.
Yes, I'm here.
Hi. Great. Well, thank you so much for your testimony, and congratulations on pursuing your PhD. Speaking of other jurisdictions and what they've done well, have you come across in your research other US jurisdictions or anywhere else other than Scotland that have effectively sought to address period poverty or are doing other creative things with access?
I think, obviously this area is one of the leading places that a lot of people reference for it. So I would say not anything that comes to top of mind. There's some areas in the Pacific Northwest, like Oregon, that has a really strong menstrual equity outreach program. But I think the concept of menstrual dignity that was mentioned earlier is something that often goes alongside of these initiatives. And so not addressing just the material and physical needs of menstruators, but the emotional and affective ones as well, is where these programs really thrive. And that making sure that there is no shame around it, and education within schools that this is a very normal thing across the gender spectrum is where you start to see not just access to period products, but a real shift in conversation around menstruation in different areas. And so I would say a next step movement is continuing not just education within schools, but public education around the needs of menstruators and things like that.
I love that. It's so important. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you to all those of this panel. Appreciate it. Thank you, Chairwoman.
Thank you very much. Our next panel.
I believe we are missing Miss Reagan Moss, the second witness, and Catalina Carvajal, the fifth witness. But we'll see if they are here once he brings up the next panel.
All right. I have Winnie Hinge. I guess I hope I did a good job with your name. Welcome.
Hello. Hello, everyone. My name is Winnie Zhang, and I'm also a community organizer at Period. I represent the DC area, and just to reiterate, Period is a nonprofit focused on eliminating period poverty and furthering menstrual equity legislation. I was beyond pleased when I was informed that this major menstrual equity bill was going up for a hearing, so I would like to thank you for letting me testify. As a college student, I have to budget for menstrual products alongside food, toilet paper, textbooks, and other necessities, but I'm still privileged and fortunate enough to still have the ability to acquire these products. Period poverty is a real struggle that 1 out of 4 menstruators experience, and this issue disproportionately affects marginalized communities. And these struggles have only been exacerbated by COVID-19. Period poverty is linked to food insecurity and healthcare issues. For example, one may have to choose between buying a box of tampons versus a meal, or one may also have to resort to paper towels, paper bags, or random pieces of cloth in order to not stain their clothes with their period blood, and these practices may not be sanitary. Mandating free menstrual products in district buildings and government-operated spaces will increase so many people's accessibility to these products and make a profound impact on decreasing period poverty in DC. This Period Act is wonderful and would make history, but work doesn't stop with the installation of a pad or tampon dispenser. There needs to be a continuous effort to restock these dispensers and allow those in the district to have continuous access to these free necessities. Menstrual products should be treated like toilet paper because, quite frankly, it's more of a necessity than toilet paper. One cannot control the bleeding from their period, but one can certainly stall their urination or bowel movements for some time. If this act is enacted in the district, it will show other states what they're capable of achieving. It will show policymakers that period poverty is a real legitimate problem that many experience and many should not be experiencing, and that the solution is quite simple: provide free access to these products. I think it is incredible how many people are here today to testify at this hearing, and it's clear that there is much support for this bill, but it really would be a shame if the Period Act wasn't enacted, because that would perpetuate the notion that marginalized groups don't matter. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Our next panelist is, I guess, Nicholas Polk. Okay, great.
Hi, how are you?
How are you? Welcome.
So I'm also a community organizer for the state of Connecticut for Period. When I stepped onto my campus for the first time, I knew I wanted to make a tangible, long-lasting change, but I didn't know what form that ambition would take. According to the Journal of Global Health Reports, period poverty is the lack of access to menstrual products and education, affecting many globally. Period poverty causes physical, mental, and emotional challenges to those it affects. The stigma around speaking openly about periods further prevent individuals from talking about it, thus causing the issue to remain. After educating myself on this issue, I created my campus's menstrual equity initiative, which led to my campus to begin offering free menstrual products. The remarkable feedback encouraged me to advocate for the same accessibility of menstrual products in all other spaces. During a winter storm, me and my friend were refilling these products, and a fellow student thanked us because her significant other didn't have to drive 20 minutes away on an icy road to deliver these products to her. This is just one story of someone not having access to products that thousands across the country and millions across the world share. I implore the council to support providing free period products in all public buildings and facilities serving vulnerable populations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker, Shruti Guamtam. Am I a little close?
A little close. It's so I'll just start then. My name is Shruti Gautam. I am a sophomore at Harvard College, and I am originally from Missouri, where a lot of my initial organizing took place and how I got involved in this movement as well. So my background comes a lot from state policy work in Missouri and just community organizing here, and mostly with the jurisdiction of schools. But I think the most important part, which I would like to give my testimony on, is about focusing on what and who this act will help the most. So I really want to thank for the introduction that included the experiences of unhoused people and vulnerable populations, because this is the group that we are looking at today. Every person needs to be able to take care of themselves in their bodily processes that they don't have their own jurisdiction over. Thus, there is a right to a bathroom, and this translates for there being a right to use these products and facilities. It's no one's fault that they have these processes, and not giving them the proper resource to take care of them is putting more people at a disadvantage and susceptible to a disease that many other of the people that gave the testimonies also have referred to earlier. And that the need, like mentioned in the beginning with the emergency housing shelter, needs to be introduced in an institutionalized government way. The point of advocacy is for change to be institutionalized, not for advocacy to continue. We can't let the conversations end today in this meeting, and that's why we need to make sure that this act is something that the government does take upon. If a government supports the idea and necessity of a product, then it should show it in its institutions. A lot of us don't really interact with the government on a regular basis, and these types of public administration buildings are our most visible extension of government. Talks in between advocates and on these levels don't really reach the public level and only go so far. And more than that, we need more than just advocacy. We need these products to be in libraries and shelters, in prisons, places where advocacy is harder to reach and where they need it the most. And as Winnie just mentioned, we need a continuous effort. Institutionalizing this act will be an accountability measure to make sure that this effort continues, that the efforts do not end simply after this meeting. If the reason to not provide these products is simply financial and just some sort of a bureaucratic basis, then that isn't reason enough. We all must agree that's not much of an ask. Any complications need to be predicated just by the idea that this is a right that should be met, and it's something that a government should show their own support for. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony, and to the entire panel. I'll ask you the same question because we do want to get as much feedback as we can on this, and that is, should the period products be of a certain quality, brand, or type? And I'm asking that of the panel.
I'll chip in here first then. I think it's incredibly important to consider quality. One thing that I'm sure some other menstruators would also agree on is that if the applicator for tampons are not comfortable, or if the packaging or size of products isn't comfortable, then they just are not usable. Quality is compatible with functionality. And on top of that, if we look at the groups that we're talking about that will be using it, these like more vulnerable groups are the ones that don't have access to more quality products. For us, it's so easy to say, let's not provide products as best quality products in these bathrooms, because in our minds, we may be able to afford them outside of these types of emergency situations. But most people don't have the luxury to always go towards products of qualities. Or like, for example, in prisons, when you have to use your own money, when you're not making any money to buy products, you're not going to go for the most quality products or whatnot. So when we provide these products, I think it's really important to make sure that it's something that is quality, which also comes into the idea of it being actually functional. And then also, I think you'd mentioned toxin-free earlier. I think it's very important to also read about the sourcing of these materials, because there have been histories of research about how products can harm people, and they are often not the best medical devices in that case. So I would definitely also agree with more research being done about the toxins in the products before they're implemented through this act.
All right, well, thank you. Anyone else want to add to the comments?
Yeah, I'll chip in and add. So, I mean, with these necessities, I think it's crucial that they're accessible to everyone. So I definitely think allergens and toxins should be considered in the process of figuring out which products and which brands to buy. But I think it's also important in the sense of like, I mean, toxic shock syndrome is such a common thing. And even though these like pads and tampons will be in government buildings and they should be more accessible, it doesn't mean that people will always have access to it. So they must go to a building, but what if it's closed? So that could lead to like people using their tampons for like extended amounts of time, which may not be good. So I think definitely considering like the different toxins in these and the materials of these products is very important. So definitely more research should be done on it.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right. Well, thank you very much to this panel. And I'll turn to Councilmember Pinto. She may have a few questions. Councilwoman?
Thank you so much. I don't have questions for this panel, but thank you all.
So thank you. We'll then turn to panel 3. And staff, will you let us know who is in the room? Thank you.
Okay, I believe from panel 3, council member, we only have Aiden Garland Minor, number 4, and number 5, Ananya Bhatia. And so we will move a couple people up from panel 4. Let's see.
Oh, are we ready?
I think so.
Not yet. Oh, okay. All right.
As long as Aiden Jane, I believe, is Aiden Garland Minor on the list. I just want to double check that.
Yes, that's me. Thank you.
Okay, awesome.
Excellent. Okay.
I think-
So we will start with, okay, all right. We can start with Aiden Garland Minor. Welcome.
Thank you. And thank you for having me. I'm Aiden Garland Minor. I am a recent graduate of university where I studied comparative ethnic studies, journalism, and women's and gender and sexuality studies. And I will begin. So the United States is founded on ideas of independence and liberty. But how can we be free from the restrictions of our identities if our identities are restricting our ability to fulfill our basic needs? Abraham Maslow declared there are 5 levels of need, and in order to attempt to attain the highest level, being self-actualization, one must fulfill the lowest of the levels, being physiological needs such as air, water, food, shelter, sleep, clothing, and reproduction. When our disability status, where we live, whether we have a place to live, or who we are, determines whether we can fulfill our basic needs, we are not free. Freedom falls under self-esteem on the 4th level of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If we truly want for every person in this country to self-actualize and maximize their potential, which I assume we would, if not because of empathy, but because we need our citizens to be safe and healthy for the economic health and success of our nation, then we must stop depriving our citizens of basic needs like period products that we have the means to provide. We can ensure that our citizens have what they need to not only survive, but have a chance to thrive. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. I think next we have Riley Rodell. Great. Okay. Welcome.
My name is Riley Rodell, and I am a high school senior from the state of New Hampshire, and I'm also the period community organizer for the state.
I'm sorry, Riley, could you maybe raise the volume of your mic? I think we're having it's a bit soft.
Is that better?
Just up a little more.
Yeah, maybe closer to the mic. It just sounds very far away.
Sure. Is that a little bit better?
It's a little bit better.
I'm
Okay.
sorry, this is as loud as it goes.
Okay, that's all
I'll
right.
try and speak as loudly as possible.
All right, sounds good.
A recent study by COHEA found that 2 out of every 5 menstruators in the United States struggled to afford period products each month. As the bill indicates, this issue can have tremendous physical and health consequences on individuals who struggle with it. Studies have shown period poverty has mental health effects as well. One study done at the University of Pennsylvania found that individuals who suffer from period poverty report higher rates of moderate to severe depression. Additionally, 1/3 of those who experience period poverty report missing out on school or work due to lack of access to adequate period management, which creates socioeconomic difficulties for these individuals. This statistic demonstrates that the lack of access to period products is a barrier that prevents those who menstruate from receiving an education or advancing in a career. This barrier will never affect their non-menstruating counterparts. Thus, period poverty contributes to the circumstances that allow men to pull ahead in society. Those who do not menstruate are able to attend work or school any day of the month without a concern that they will not be able to attend to their basic bodily functions properly. I believe this bill will be a huge step in the fight against patriarchy that is so ingrained in American society. I am lucky to never have experienced period poverty on a personal level. However, as someone who lives with endometriosis, I feel that I'm able to empathize with those who have. I have personally been forced to miss out on opportunities as a result of my period and the debilitating pain that comes with it since I was a freshman in high school. This is something that I would not wish on anyone else. Unlike my disease, period poverty is an issue that can be fixed, and legislation like this bill helps to do so. I would like to thank Council Member Brooke Pinto for introducing this bill, and hope that it will not only be passed, but also serve as an example to other cities and states across the nation in the journey towards menstrual equity.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your testimony. I believe we have Helena Hernandez. Yes. Okay.
Yes. Hi, thank you. Good afternoon, committee members, and thank you for the opportunity to testify on this important bill. My name is Helena Hernandez, and I am the Public Affairs Manager at Planned Parenthood of Metropolitan Washington, D.C., or otherwise known as PPMW. I'm honored to testify today on behalf of PPMW in support of B24-0653, the Period Equity, Righting, and Injustice of District Residents Act of 2022, or the Period Act. I thank Councilmember Pinto for your leadership in introducing this bill and Chairwoman Bonds for bringing it to a public hearing. I also thank the council members who have signed on as sponsors. PPMW is the region's oldest and largest provider of sexual and reproductive health care services, including a robust educational program. Our health educators teach that menstruation is a normal and natural part of human development. However, in DC, when someone is menstruating and cannot afford access to menstrual hygiene products, this normal and natural part of life can present serious health consequences and inequities. Access to menstrual hygiene products is a matter of public health as well as gender justice. A lack of access to menstrual hygiene products has been associated with many negative health outcomes, including higher rates of cervical cancer and increased rates of infection from unsanitary menstrual management, school absenteeism, and psychosocial consequences like feelings of shame, fear, anxiety, and distraction. Access to menstrual hygiene products is essential for the health, well-being, and full participation in society for all who menstruate. Because of this, we supported previous legislation to require free menstrual products in DC's public and charter schools, and we're thrilled to see that included in the budget. We thank Councilmember Pinto, again, and former Councilmember Grosso for their leadership. The expansion included in the currently pending legislation to all public buildings in DC, as well as other properties and entities that have human services contracts, is a great addition that will help many people in DC who menstruate, including and especially those who have low incomes and are unhoused. For example, menstruating people with low incomes may be forced to prioritize among competing needs with too few resources, and sanitary menstrual care may be out of their financial reach. Prohibitive costs should not be an issue when periods are a monthly occurrence, and menstrual care is a matter of health, hygiene, and dignity. Food stamps do not cover these products. Medicaid does not cover menstrual hygiene products. So too often menstruating people with low incomes are forced to scramble to figure out how they are going to afford managing their periods every month, and as a result may resort to unsanitary products. I know I'm coming up on time, so thank you again to Councilmember Pinto for your leadership in introducing this important bill, and to Chairwoman Bonds for holding this hearing. I urge the committee to move quickly in sending this bill to the full council for consideration, and thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. I think I see Anania Vitana.
Yes, hello, sorry. Okay, so good afternoon, council members. My name is Ananya Bhatia. I am 17, a current high school senior from Shreveport, Louisiana, and the current period community organizer for my state. I have come before you today in favor of the Period Act. I am privileged to attend schools in Louisiana that freely provides menstrual products in their restrooms, a movement I lead in my state and one the city of DC has supported. This council has already taken the steps to lessen the stigma, fear, and insecurity menstruators of my similar age and younger attach to having a period. But the next step is, of course, government buildings. In addition to being a high school student, I'm a former government employee. This past summer, I worked 10 weeks, 8 to 5, at my local juvenile court, serving constituents of all ages that remain looped in a cycle of systemic disadvantage, income inequality, and of course, period poverty. So I come before you today as a face for students, employees, and constituents. I know what it is like to have a 5-minute recess from court, use the bathroom, have a period unexpectedly, not have what is needed, and then be expected back in a matter of seconds. I know what it is like to be asked by clients for a menstrual product and have nothing to offer. These are stories I am sure are shared by all that enter work and expect service from a city-run building. It is a series of experiences you as leaders have the power to end. What occurs in my local community is not an isolated incident. It is universal to every city in this nation. It is something the council of our country's most preeminent city has the ability to set a precedent for, one that I and others can then take back to our local communities and ask for. I urge DC to take its place among cities such as Ann Arbor, Michigan, and Fort Worth, Texas, cities that provide free menstrual products in their government-owned buildings, and cities whose governments and constituents are now looped in a cycle of resources and support from their local governments. I hope you see the urgency and power the Period Act holds for your city and cities across our country, and I ask you to vote in its favor. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for bringing this bill to fruition.
Thank you very much for your testimony. And I think the last on our panel is Erwin Palmer, Commissioner Palmer. Welcome.
Hello, good afternoon. Thank you, Councilmember Bonds and Councilmember Pinto, the other committee members and staff for taking time to hear from the public today about the Period Equity Writing and Injustice of District Residents Act. My name is Erin Palmer. I'm a Ward 4 resident and an advisory neighborhood commissioner testifying in my individual capacity. I am heartened to see this legislation with near unanimous support from the council to address period equity by requiring free period products in government-owned and leased buildings and for shelters and congregate care facilities. I am testifying today based in part on my personal challenges with finding public restrooms and period products. I have at times experienced such extensive bleeding that it has stained my clothes and anything I sit on, which can bring stress and shame. I recently publicly shared an experience I had where I had blood all over my clothes in public. And part of why I did that was to talk about the experience in a way that would hopefully reduce stigma. And what I was most heartened by in sharing that is that people were extremely supportive and understanding. And it was an affirmation that this type of experience is so common. My challenges are not unique. We know that many people menstruate and need period products. We know this is a common bodily function and something that we should both be able to talk about openly and also provide support for. I also wanted to note some very basic human rights principles that are tied into the issue of menstruation and what people need, which include the right to health, the right to education, the right to work, the right to non-discrimination and gender equality, reproductive rights and bodily autonomy, and the right to water and sanitation. And we know that menstruation can raise challenges if we're not properly supported, whether that's missing work or school because you're dealing with period challenges, or even health and sanitation problems where you can develop issues if you're not supporting yourself with proper period products and changing them regularly. We know that there is a stigma around period products. It's part of the shame of bleeding publicly, and it's also why these discussions are so important. It's why I'm so thankful for this legislation and also this hearing and opportunities to talk about this publicly. I wanted to provide a few points for consideration with regard to the legislation specifically. Period products in the legislation are defined as pads and tampons. I would just note that there are also menstrual cups and period underwear, and those are harder to provide publicly in restrooms, but something we should consider in terms of a possible subsidy. There have been mention of the quality of products, and I would also note that people have varying needs. So the absorbency, I think you would have to provide some diversity of options to people because some people need a heavier support system for what they're dealing with in terms of their periods. In terms of vulnerable populations, I greatly appreciate consideration of those in shelters. Incarcerated individuals are another group with very specific needs, which may or may not be addressed by how this legislation is written. I hope this legislation, as well as all period equity efforts, will coincide with expansion of the public bathroom pilot. As we know, when we're dealing with bodily functions and periods, it's partly the product and also partly the facility. You can't really have one without the other. And as with all legislation, what comes after the vote is also important, including the funding, implementation, and enforcement. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Do we have Sarah with us? Mastella? No? Okay, all right, okay. Well, I don't have any questions of this panel. I just appreciate so much the variations that we got. We heard from teenagers, and we've heard from many who have these considerations. I can attest to it and say it does happen. and yes, there is a little bit usually the stigma with it, but it is natural, and you know, it sounds like we're all on the same page for this. And so I'm looking forward to moving it forward. We still have a few witnesses, Councilmember Pinto, so we'll hear what they have to say, but I do not have any questions of this panel whatsoever.
Hi, Councilmember. We actually just had Sarah join us from the Greater DC Diaper Bank, who's on this panel.
All right.
I'd like to hear from her.
All right, thank you.
Hi, sorry, I think I was behind the wall, but I'm here. And Chairperson Bonds and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify in support of the Period Act of 2022, which would require the provision of free period products in district buildings and government operated spaces. My name is Sarah Marsteller. I'm the Communications and Development Manager at the Greater DC Diaper Bank. Our vision is to provide basic necessities that aren't covered by government programs such as food stamps and WIC. We serve 32,000 families annually in DC, Maryland, and Virginia, and distribute approximately 850,000 diapers each month. While it's not in our name, we also distribute thousands and thousands of period products each month, along with adult diapers and other essential hygiene items, and work with over 75 partners throughout the DC region. To date, we've distributed over 30 million baby diapers to families in need. Since 2019, we've distributed a total of 700,546 period products throughout the DC metropolitan region. And already in 2022, we've distributed 257,729 period products. I'm pleased to be in front of you today supporting this bill. Menstrual hygiene is linked closely to overall physical health and mental wellness, and access to menstrual hygiene products is an equity issue that affects many of our most vulnerable residents. If you're someone who's ever menstruated, you know that period products are necessities like toilet paper and water. The city provides toilet paper, soap, paper towels, and other needed hygiene items in district buildings, so it should also provide period products. These items are just as vital to personal hygiene as toilet paper. Without access to hygiene items, those who menstruate are likely to use products past the point of sanitary use, which puts them at higher risk for infection or other health issues. The stigma surrounding periods compounds this. People who menstruate are often scared to ask for what they need because periods are seen as shameful or dirty. Providing these items for free will help mitigate that added layer of inaccessibility. Making these items available in all public district buildings, from libraries to shelters, as the bill stipulates, will also ensure that our most vulnerable residents will have access to these items and that they will be equally available to everyone. Shelters especially can have difficulty sourcing period products for their clients because they're so infrequently donated. They're often overlooked as being a basic essential material for people who have periods, so they are just as needed as clothing, food, or shelter. Lack of access to adequate hygiene supplies like period products can prevent people from leaving home due to fear of bleeding through clothing or embarrassment. This keeps many struggling residents away from programs designed to provide other essential services. Menstrual equity is about so much more than the physical item, and this bill is as well. This is an enormous step toward ensuring that all who need it have the resources and access to manage their periods in a dignified and healthy way, and those in need are seen. Greater DC Diaper Bank is proud to support this bill that recognizes the inherent worth of every human and our right to be clean, and that will create better access to period hygiene essentials for all DC residents. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for your testimony. And I just wanted to ask, if I could, Sarah, I wanted to ask you a little bit about, considering, I think Sarah's still with us, considering the wide range of individual menstrual needs, I wonder, do you think there should be options available in regard to the size of the products that are provided? And if so, can you give us some guidance as to what would constitute an opportunity to show the diversity, but not have 8, 10, 15 different items that we would have on display and make available? Or should we have all of the items, the products that you can find in the marketplace available at each of the locations?
I don't think it would be possible to have every item that's available in the marketplace available. I do think, as many other panelists mentioned, there has to be a concerted effort to provide a variety in terms of size, and in terms of options. I mean, at the diaper bank, a lot of what we get asked for is pads, because that's a lot of what the clientele we're serving are using. But each person has their own needs, their own preferences, and I think there should be an effort made to reflect that need of everyone.
I appreciate that response. I'm, quizzing you about it because you indicated that you've already distributed 700,000 products. And, I'm trying to take my lead from you as it relates to what this might look like in the way of distribution. So that's the nature of my question.
Unfortunately, as a nonprofit, we don't have, quite as much say over what we distribute, because a lot of it is coming in from donations. But we have a pretty wide variety. And again, we do cater more to pads, just because that's what our audience prefers and what people ask us for. But I don't know that that's necessarily generally reflective of the broader audience. But yeah, we have a lot of different brands on our shelves. Yeah.
Okay, I was just curious about that. Well, thank you very much. And I'll turn to Councilwoman Pinto.
Great, thank you so much. And I actually do have a number of questions for the panel. I don't know if everyone's still here. If we still have Ms. Hernandez or Ms. Palmer from the panel. I know they got kind of merged together.
See Ms.
Oh,
Hernandez.
wonderful. Okay, I see Ms. Hernandez coming back.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. So, Ms. Hernandez, I want to start with you. You talked about some of the kind of infections or health consequences that can be associated. Do you have any information on the types of toxins that can be particularly problematic or cause harm that are associated with particular hygiene product brands?
Yeah, I don't have any off the top of my head right now at this moment, but I can definitely get with my health center staff and get back to you with that information.
Okay, that would be great.
Well. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and as you've seen, I think that's a consistent thing we've heard a lot about today, is making sure that we are recognizing the intersectionality of these issues around health and the environment and sustainability. And so I think this could be a really important opportunity to be as specific as we can in the language of this legislation. So that would be great.
Yes, thank you.
In terms of education, one of our last panels, we were talking about education not only for our students, but also for the broader public. Have you seen or have any ideas for more effective strategies to help combat stigma in the population at large around menstruation?
Yeah, so one thing we do, we have a period project within PPMW, and a part of that is getting products like tampons and pads and wipes to students in our region who need help and assistance with affordability and just access to that. And one of the things we always send with that is an educational pamphlet as well. So maybe in some of these buildings and stuff, holding, creating some educational awareness pamphlets or things to give to people, and also to just make people more aware and destigmatize periods for all people who menstruate. I think that would be something that's great, and that can, be something that is in bathrooms themselves or just in government office buildings as well. Because we don't need to hide it in the bathroom because more than half the population has periods. So yeah, I think that would be wonderful and definitely needed to destigmatize.
Okay, that's great. I really appreciate that. And I completely agree. And we have menstrual products out in our office. If anyone needs them, they're in our front office as well. Ms. Palmer, if you're still here, thank you so much for sharing your experience. I think that is exactly as you said, to reducing stigma, really powerful to share the reality that happens to so many of us. And thank you for that, for what is brave now, and what hopefully won't be in a short time. I wanted to follow up with something that you said. You made a comment about incarcerated individuals, and I think you said the language of the bill, may or may not help with this population. Can you elaborate on what you mean by that so we can try to strengthen the language?
Sure. I think this is actually something, like many things we deal with, that's more complicated because of our lack of statehood. So when we're dealing with populations that might not be held locally, like we may have DC residents that are incarcerated elsewhere. So that can be complicated, but maybe there's a way to address that. And I think the needs of someone who's incarcerated, like the access issues just might be different in a way that I can't fully comprehend. So I wouldn't know what the specific needs would be. But I just see that as something that might require some more direct attention.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I think that's a fair point, for the DC residents who are serving time outside. The other area that this has come up is in our effort to improve the quality of nutrition at our DC jail, and women who are incarcerated have said, some of the challenges associated with when they're on their cycle and needing different levels of food and different amounts sometimes, or different types, and how that can be a major challenge when you're not controlling what you're consuming. So that's another kind of angle, but
yeah, interesting.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. And do we still have Miss Marsteller here?
Yes, I'm here.
Hi. Well, thank you so much for doing what you do. I'm so amazed and impressed by your huge, important operation. And when I visited the DC Diaper Bank, one of the things that we talked about was about the stigma associated with tampons for some of your clientele. And I know you talked a little bit about this to Chairwoman Bonds about the kind of preference of pads, but is that an element of it that you can articulate, that there's stigma associated that you found with one product over the other?
Yeah, I think, many of the communities we serve, tampons are just not widely used. And there's, again, sort of that stigma around something going inside the body potentially seen as unclean. And then oftentimes the caseworkers who are picking up items from families tend to go with pads just because sometimes there's language barrier. So if you're trying to explain to someone how to use a pad for the first time versus a tampon, a pad is probably going to be less complex. So there's a couple different reasons for it. I think some of them are cultural, some of them are just sort of circumstance and communication. But again, I think, I don't know that that's necessarily reflective of the general population. I still think it's important to provide, as many options as possible. We do also, we do provide menstrual cups and that sort of thing. Again, they're not as popular, but just to have, as many options for people as possible.
Okay, well, thank you so much. And I'll just
Thank
say,
you.
you mentioned the provision of incontinence pads, and I think that that's another really important thing for all of us to talk about more readily and to reduce the stigma around of just very real needs that many of our residents have.
Absolutely.
Thank you for that. Thank you for all the
Thank you.
panelists.
Thank you very much. We'll move to the next panel. Who do we have, Amanda?
So it looks like we have our second speaker from panel 1, Rabia Ganima. I don't know if I'm saying that properly. Hopefully I am. And then we have, I believe we have the last 3 people from panel 6, Anya Patel, Alexandra O'Brien, and Marcy Birnbaum. And we have 3 people from panel 5. Carolina Borges, Rohana Chintakindi, and Beth West Brodsky.
All right, so I believe we are at panel 5, correct?
Yes, but we are going to put panel 5 and 6 together because
okay, and it'll make 6. Okay, so we'll start with Carolina Borges. Am I correct? What's that? Okay.
Yes.
I'll make sure I got the right. Okay.
Hi. So my name is Carolina Borges, and I'm currently a high school senior in Miami, Florida. I'm a period community organizer for the state of Florida, and I just wanted to talk a little bit about my own experiences as a high school student in a rather conservative area. From my own experiences, I've not only seen a lack of materials for menstruators in my community, but also reluctance to implement resources as I started my own chapter within my community. And I often found that it's quite difficult to actually have these materials actually put in place in a lot of schools in my area, just because it's still seen as a very taboo subject. However, with the implementation of this bill in government buildings in Washington, D.C., I think it would provide a movement in the right direction, hopefully aiding imitation for other states to follow in these footsteps, as we often see, at least from my own experience, that many girls have to opt for rather unsanitary practices when on their periods, simply due to the fact that we just don't have the resources readily available to us to kind of take care of our needs. So I believe that in setting an example and in setting this this type of source of resources, I think it would actually provide a great example for other cities and similar places to follow in footsteps. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. I think the next person is Rohana Shinat. Forgive me, please, Rohana.
Okay, it's Rohana Chintakindi.
All right.
Good afternoon. Thank you to the Housing and Executive Administration Committee for offering the opportunity to provide testimony on Bill 24-0653. My name is Rohana Chintakindi, and I'm a second-year neuroscience major attending The Ohio State University. I'm the period community organizer for the state of Ohio, as well as the PAD project ambassador on the Public Health Committee. Thank you for allowing me to share my experiences and testify today. More than 4 in 5 menstruating students have missed class or arrived late to class because of the lack of accessibility to period products. Throughout high school and undergrad, I was one of those students. There were days where I would bleed through my clothes and be unable to change all day. I've had to walk across campus to obtain a period product, panicked because I couldn't find anyone in the bathroom with an extra pad, felt embarrassed to ask a non-menstruating teacher for a pass to go to the nurse, and have been overall distracted from my education because of a natural bodily process that I could not control. I will admit that I grew up very privileged and have never had to worry about being unable to afford period products or choosing between food and period products, which is a reality that nearly half of women face each year. Even though I grew up being able to afford these products, I am human and have routinely forgotten to take them with me, especially when I was younger. I've never understood why I, as a menstruator, was burdened with an extra responsibility of bringing my own products instead of being provided by my public school the hygiene products that I needed. Again, I was privileged enough to be able to afford these products, but I can't imagine the humility and shame that my peers who couldn't afford these products faced. I would constantly wish that my higher education institution and my future place of occupation would eliminate the anxiety that prevented me from feeling comfortable in a place that constantly preached about its safe, welcoming environment. District buildings and government operated spaces, I imagine, strive to create a similar environment where everyone is given the chance to work comfortably. I strongly believe that giving access to free period products will demonstrate a commitment to equity in the workplace, increase workplace efficiency, and ensure the safety of menstruators. Additionally, this equitable environment will eliminate anxiety, embarrassment, and lack of focus. Putting a price on a naturally occurring process that half the population faces questions the inclusivity of a workplace that serves to uphold this country. Again, thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony on this important piece of legislation. Real menstruators will be positively impacted if this passes. DC also has the opportunity to commit to menstrual equity and serve as an inspiration to legislators all around the world. I'm urging you on behalf of Period, the PAD Project, and as a menstruator to vote yes on Bill 24-0653 and indicate your unwavering support to eradicating period poverty in DC. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. I think we have Beth Brodska. I believe she's with us. Beth?
Hello.
All right. Okay. Go right
Hello,
ahead.
my name is
Yes.
Beth Brodsky. Hi. My name is Beth Brodsky. I'm a law student at the University of the District of Columbia, David A. Clark School of Law. I've worked as a student research assistant with the UDC Legislative Clinic, where I've spent the past few months comparing municipal, state, federal, and international bills and statutes that offer free menstrual products in various public spaces. I support this bill in my personal capacity. Despite my past 4 months of research on jurisdictions making free menstrual products available, a few days ago, I could not access menstrual products myself. I went to a DC professional event requiring business attire, so I wore a pair of tights. And outside the event, a group of men were uncomfortably staring at me, and I wasn't sure why. And so when I got to the bathroom, I realized they were staring because, surprise, I got my period, which for me, like many menstruators, is hard to predict. So I had bled through my tights. As a student, I'm trying to establish a professional identity in public spaces, and nobody wants to hire someone who bleeds all over themselves. In the bathroom, there were no menstrual products, no tampons, pads, cups, no spare underwear. I asked multiple other people for a product, and nobody could help me. I left the building, I walked by libraries, parks, businesses, other DC government buildings, chain stores, and I could not access free menstrual products anywhere. I'm a student research assistant, so like many DC area employees, I'm paid a minimum wage. I walked to a pharmacy to buy menstrual products and paid what equates to about an hour of work, so I wouldn't bleed and stand on the UDC law cloth chairs during my 3-hour class. I've had this issue at many jobs in DC. I've sat through 9-hour workdays smelling terrible and afraid of staining office furniture because I bled through the workplace toilet paper when I couldn't find a product. I've been a DC temporary worker since 2018, and changing workplaces constantly means that in the past few years, I often don't know where bathrooms with menstrual products are or where I could afford them. Imagine walking a mile to find toilet paper for 4 to 10 days every month. That's what DC workers and residents do for period products. And we can do better. I encourage DC to lead as the most accessible jurisdiction for menstruators. If all spaces, public, private buildings, businesses, the local libraries, public parks, outdoor public restrooms, if they all had products, DC menstruators like myself would not have to go on a scavenger hunt for menstrual products and instead could quickly grab one. If men in the community were comfortable with menstruators asking them, can you grab me a pad or tampon because there's proper public education and access to products in all bathrooms, if there were posters in bathrooms or a map of a closer location of where I could freely access products, I could maintain my privacy knowing where to go. If these products were in the same stall for better access, or if there were a variety of options for absorbency and product type, we can be a jurisdiction friendly to menstruators. DC is doing better with this bill, but to stay as a leader, we can go further to offer menstruators dignity and privacy. We've seen over 30 other jurisdictions write a new vision for our menstrual landscape, and we can still improve on their work. I worked with Professor Marcy Karen, who was one of the first speakers earlier today. I encourage you for technical support to refer to our written testimony that we wrote with Stella Iwe that encourages the best of all of these jurisdictions. I support this bill with an optimistic push that we can go further. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. I believe the next speaker, Anaya Patel.
Hi.
Hi.
So hi, my name is Anya Patel. I am a period community organizer and the founder of Global Girls Initiative, which is a nonprofit that has provided over 300,000 period products to youth and students in underserved communities. I am also a senior at a Title I high school in Tampa, Florida. And a Title I high school is where over 50% of the attending students are on free or reduced lunch. And most of these students live in low socioeconomic areas. I first learned about period poverty when I spoke with my nurse, and I found out that dozens of girls were coming to her every week asking for a period product, but she had to turn them down because the school had no budget for these products. This made me realize that period poverty isn't only an issue in third world countries, but it's also something prevalent within my own community and other communities in America. Having access to period products is a matter of personal dignity, a healthcare right, and a basic human right. It's not a luxury. No one carries around tissue paper or soap in their purse or wallet to manage their hygiene needs. So there is no need for period products not to be accessible in public restrooms as well. The real issue is that for far too long, recognition that period poverty exists is hidden, and this takes a massive toll on health and well-being of so many individuals in our communities and schools. It is time for a change that this government can act on and set a precedence for others in our nation to follow. It is vital to one's health to have access to period products in government bathrooms. When pads and tampons are worn for longer periods of time, it can lead to UTIs, toxic shock syndrome, and other reproductive health issues. It also takes a toll on a mental well-being. I've been able to work with my school district to install menstrual hygiene dispensers in Title I high schools as a pilot program, and I'm expanding to all the other middle and high schools as well. I hope that today's decision makers will create a change by providing free and easy access to period products in all women's and gender neutral bathrooms of the DC government buildings, just like soap and tissue papers are available to menstruators during their cycle.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Alexandra O'Brien.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. Good, thank you. Good afternoon, Council Member Bonds and Council Member Pinto and the committee. My name is Alexandra O'Brien. I'm 17 and I'm a co-founder of Mission Red, a grassroots organization dedicated to elevating the menstrual justice movement through education, advocacy, and aid in DC, Maryland, and Virginia. And I'm here today in support of the Period Act. When I was 14, I inadvertently found myself a part of the menstrual justice movement when I came to high school, and I realized that my experience, where I was lucky enough to have period products provided to me by my school, was not the norm. I learned that my peers, young menstruators in DC, in my own backyard, were missing school because of insufficient access to period products and the stigma associated with menstruation. For me, there was no choice. Something had to be done. The Expanding Student Access to Period Products Act of 2021 was an incredibly important step in addressing the tangible impacts of period poverty for students in DC, and it is essential that we build on that progress. Today, we are discussing a matter of dignity, a matter of justice, and a matter of health and safety. Having a period is not a choice. Sufficient access to period products is not a luxury. Like everyone here today said, period products are essential in the same way that toilet paper is essential. And this legislation makes significant strides in addressing the stigma that serves as a barrier to menstrual equity. My co-founder at Mission Red taught sexual education courses last summer and realized that many young menstruators lack knowledge about their periods because of the stigma around these conversations. And because of this, they rely on shelters and public spaces for access to products, emphasizing the importance of this legislation. By providing free period products in public spaces, in gender neutral bathrooms, and implementing clear signage to alert menstruators to the location of products, we can protect young menstruators in vulnerable populations, especially transgender, non-binary, low income, and menstruators of color. Public spaces support district residents in many ways, and by providing free period products, they can become a safe haven for the mental and physical health of menstruating people. It is unthinkable that in 2022, in the nation's capital, the high cost and unavailability of period products prevents menstruators from taking care of their periods with privacy and respect. We've made a lot of progress in destigmatizing menstruation by even having this dialogue today, but there's still a long way to go. We must take action to reinforce the idea that periods are nothing to be ashamed of, and that providing resources for district residents to manage their periods is essential. I hope to live in a world where insufficient access to period products does not inhibit anyone's ability to go about their daily life with dignity, and I believe this legislation is an important step in securing that future. I'd like to thank Chairperson Bonds and Councilmember Brooke Pinto for your leadership and all the work you've done to promote period equity in the district, and for allowing me to share my perspective this afternoon. And I encourage you to support the Period Act. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for your testimony. And our next speaker, our next witness is Marcy Benbrown. Ms. Benbrown, welcome. Okay, there you are.
I think you might need to unmute.
Can you hear me now? My apologies.
Yes, now we can hear you. Yes, thank you.
My name is Marcia Birnbaugh, and I'm testifying in my capacity as a member of DC Public Restrooms. Our role as a group of concerned DC residents is to ensure the successful implementation of the 2 restroom pilots provided for under Law 22-280, Public Restroom Facilities Installation Promotion Act. Our research as members of the People for Peerless Coalition Downtown DC Public Restroom Initiative both inspired and informed the introduction of the bill with the same name, and it was passed in 2018. One of the 2 pilots, which directs the DC government to install and maintain 2 standalone restrooms open 24/7, with hope for more in the future, is under the purview of the Department of General Services. I'm here today on behalf of myself and my DC Public Restroom Knowledge colleagues to thank you, Councilmember Pinto, for introducing this bill and to provide our full support for the bill. There are many women who live in Washington, D.C., who, when their periods come, do not have the means to purchase sanitary supplies. Not having access to sanitary supplies when needed can endanger one's health and prove to be very embarrassing, as several of you have testified. Other cities in the United States have passed or are in the process of passing laws requiring sanitary supplies to be made available in public restrooms. They include the University of Michigan, which requires free menstrual products in their public restrooms, Fort Worth, Texas, which requires that free menstrual products be made available in community centers, libraries, the city hall, and the municipal court, Dallas, Texas, which requires menstrual products in public facilities, including rec centers, community centers, branch libraries, concentrated in high poverty neighborhoods, Hamilton County, Ohio, which requires free menstrual products in buildings, and the state of Colorado, which requires free menstrual products in public schools and colleges. What distinguishes this bill, to my knowledge, is its breadth. Bill 24-0653 requires district agencies to, quote, provide free period products and bathrooms in all government-operated buildings. In addition, it requires, quote, entities that have been awarded human care agreements with the district, including shelters and congregate care facilities, to provide free products to visitors and clients. This includes entities that have been awarded human care agreements, providing social health, human, and educational services directly to minors in the custody of the district and residents who are disabled, disadvantaged, displaced, elderly, indigent, mentally ill, physically ill, and unemployed. It's really gratifying to see that this bill has been co-sponsored by 12 of 13 members of the DC Council. I'm very pleased to see that. May Washington, DC, our nation's capital, serves as a model for all cities in the United States in comprehensive coverage of all government-owned and financed facilities reach out and include our residents in need. I would like to say in closing, having had experience with having a bill passed, I don't know whether the fiscal impact statement has been prepared, but I do hope that this bill is passed as soon as possible. I would hope that the mayor, who has the decision-making power, moves speedily to encourage implementation, and also that the logistics are in place to make sure that this happens and that there are not problems with distribution. As they say, the devil is in the details. But again, congratulations to all of you. Thanks for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you very much, and thanks to this panel for their thoughtful testimony. I'll start again. I think as we are looking at how we would implement this legislation, I wanted to know from this panel if you've given any consideration to what would be the advice to the government as to the size of the products or the type of products that would be located in these public spaces. And this is to the entire panel.
I can provide a little bit of insight from my experience. So primarily I've worked in high schools in DC and Virginia, and we found that there's more, I think it was mentioned earlier, but a greater request for pads because that just seems to be what people are demanding. So I think like it's really important to have various levels of absorbency of pads because like so many people have mentioned, this legislation really targets people who might not have the opportunity to, you know, change their period product as frequently as is ideal. So to have higher absorbency pads could be helpful in that regard.
Thank you.
Councilmember, I'm sorry, we are still missing one last panelist.
Oh.
Yes, she from the first panel that we pulled down to the last, it's Rabia Ghanima.
All right, I'm so sorry, I didn't realize that.
Hello.
So we will, oh yes, you were here earlier and then you got juggled around. All right, welcome.
Good afternoon. My name is Rabia Ghanima. I'm a student at Northeastern Illinois University. I'm a period community organizer in the state of Illinois, and I reside in Chicago, Illinois. I first want to start off by saying thank you to Councilmember Anita Bonds and the Committee on Housing and Executive Administration. I'm here today to testify on behalf of Bill B24-0653. As a female signed at birth, getting my period at 11 was not my choice. A lot of things I've experienced as a woman weren't my choice, but testifying here today is a choice I have made and something I feel very passionate about. With the state of our world, it is crucial to support menstruators and provide free period products for them, but especially in government-operated buildings. In our world today, having access to period products is a privilege. Access to period products should not be a privilege, but rather a right. There's already so much sex and gender discrimination across the government within female reproductive health, and by choosing to pass this bill, we'll be working towards ending that and providing accessible period products for everyone. This includes expanding and improving initiatives seeking to provide access to menstrual products for vulnerable populations. Gender and sex are not the sole key players in this bill. You'll notice that race and class also play an important role, as many low-income women of color do not have the same access to resources as their counterparts. The intersectionality of these identities proves that female health is a social justice issue and should be advocated for as such. Ensuring that period products are free and accessible to menstruators isn't just about providing free products, it's about keeping menstruators safe and healthy. Not having period products accessible in government facilities is an act of discrimination. No one fights for toilet paper in public restrooms. Toilet paper is a given, so why aren't period products? Providing these period products in gender-inclusive restrooms also protects menstruators who identify differently on the gender spectrum. Having a period is a normal biological function. Choosing to discriminate against menstruators by not providing the products necessary to support their financial, social, and political implications. Having a period is not a choice, but supporting and providing aid for menstruators is. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to testify, and I welcome any questions.
Thank you very much for your testimony. I will ask you also, as I was asking the other panel, the questions about should the period products be of a certain quality. We discussed a little bit organic, toxin-free, comfortable to use, that kind of discussion. Do you have anything you want to contribute to the discussion in that regard?
Yeah, so me personally, I'm a sexual assault survivor. So for me, I would never use tampons because I feel like they're a little bit too invasive for me. So I've always been one to use pads. So I feel like they're kind of like on the safer side. They're just more comfortable and they're easier to kind of adapt to. Whereas tampons you kind of have to learn what works for you and all of that. Also, I come from a very like cultural home, and there's a lot of like ingrained purity culture and things like that. So tampons weren't even on the table to begin with. So it's kind of that fear was instilled very early on to even use tampons. So I feel like pads are usually a safer and better alternative in regards to period products.
Okay. Does anyone else on the panel want to contribute to that? I think we've heard, that pads seem to be certainly the first choice. So I'm just trying to.
Yeah, I just wanted to second what everyone else was saying about definitely having different levels of absorbency, I think is really important, and also having different sizes. And in terms of toxins, I think something that people tend to stay away from is fragrances, because fragrances in pads and tampons can be very irritating. And also, I think one thing that wasn't really mentioned was having wings on the pad. A lot of pads that are offered, like in my schools, I know they did not have wings, and a lot of menstruators just prefer to ask around for a pad rather than go to the nurse for a pad because they knew they didn't have wings and therefore it wasn't really usable for them. So
Great, thank you. We're getting closer to understanding what the universal piece or pieces would be. So thank you very much for that. Ms. Birnbaum, you want to join? I see you. Okay, okay. We can't hear you. You're muted. Okay, now we can hear you. Did you want to add to that conversation?
As somebody who hasn't had need for these products for 25 years, I'm really the person to comment.
I understand the feeling. All right, thank you so much. All right, I will turn to Councilmember Pinto. She may have a few questions. Councilwoman?
Thank you so much. Talk about another issue we need to reduce stigma around. But I just want to thank this panel for a lot of really great ideas that were shared. And I don't have questions, but I wanted to address Ms. Birnbaum's point about the cost. Thank you so much for raising that. This is something that I tried to get included in both the mayor's proposed budget and our past budget last year and over the summer, unsuccessfully. So we do know the cost. The hope was to get it funded, and then we could, once it was passed, it would be able to be implemented right away. That's how we did it for the schools bill, which is why the schools are implementing the period products this year. So we know that this bill, the FIS is $1.7 million for the first year and about 1.1 million for years after that. So this is doable, and hopefully we can get it funded in this year's budget. Thank you all. Thank you, Chairwoman.
Thank you all very much for your testimony today. And we'll now turn to our government witness. And Danielle Mendors, I think I saw you a little earlier. Oh, I see you now. Okay.
Hi, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, we can. And would you raise your right hand so we can swear you in? All right. Do you swear and affirm that your testimony and any statements that are made here today to be truthful and complete?
I do.
All right. Thank you so much. And you can proceed when you're ready.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairperson Bonds, Councilmember Pinto, and staff of the Committee on Housing and Executive Administration. I am Danielle Metters, Deputy Chief Operating Officer for the Department of General Services. I'm here today to present testimony regarding Bill 24-653, the Period Equity, Writing, and Injustice of District Residents, Period Act of 2022. This legislation would require the district government and private entities that lease district government-owned buildings to install and maintain dispensers that provide free menstrual products and bathrooms located in those buildings. The legislation builds upon legislation passed at the start of the year, the Expanding Student Access to Period Products Act of 2022, that required DC schools to install and maintain dispensers that provide free menstrual products. The Department of General Services supports the intent of Bill 24-653 to ensure equitable access to those needed products for all. But we would like to raise some resource and operational considerations. If this legislation moves forward, DGS, as the agency responsible for building maintenance and repairs for all district-owned and managed facilities, we would need to perform initial dispenser installation, as well as ongoing maintenance and product restocking. The agency already performs this work with regard to basic hygiene products such as toilet paper and hand soap. Period products would therefore need to be added to our basic hygiene product category, which will carry an additional cost. Should the bill move forward, DGS stands ready to work with the committee and the Office of Chief Financial Officer to calculate a fiscal impact for the legislation, using the underlying data and funding calculations DCPS provided for the school period product legislation as a starting point. Additionally, the legislation's requirement for free period products at district-owned buildings leased to private entities currently does not exist in agency standard language for these types of leases, commonly known as outleases. If the bill were to move forward, the agency would need time to develop and insert the necessary language in the form of a lease amendment for all current applicable leases. The agency would then include this language as a standard moving forward for newly negotiated outleases. Thank you for the opportunity to discuss this measure. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have at this time.
All right, well, thank you very much. You mentioned the cost of the dispensers and the maintenance of the dispensers. When you say maintenance, are you speaking of the mechanical gizmo that would disperse the product, or are you speaking, okay.
Yes.
I didn't know. Okay, I didn't know whether it was the maintenance, just going and putting the products in the machine or just what. Okay. And so you have not yet come up with an estimate. Is that correct?
We're currently going through our non-DCPS portfolio, and we're taking inventory of every woman's gender-neutral bathrooms, and in some cases, men's bathroom. So that's what we're currently doing now.
All right. And what did the inventory regarding the schools reveal as a cost?
I am uncertain. We utilize the cost. So the cost that they did provide, which we received from the OCFO, was a certain amount for each dispenser. And for what we've estimated so far of how many bathrooms we have, we just used that. And then I believe they had the cost for the actual products, for refilling the products. But again, it may be different depending on, the vendors that we use moving forward. So we had, they also included dispenser replacement if any cost of repair. So we did utilize that for now as at least base level.
All right. And so do you have a number? Do you have a number for what it costs to install the dispensers? Surely you must have a number for that. And then a number for the products and the replenishing of the products.
At this time, we're still working on those numbers, and we are working closely with the Office of Chief Financial Officer for that. We have reached out to some of our vendors to see if we could possibly receive some quotes for how much those dispensers will cost.
All right.
But
and
we
maybe-
currently don't have it at this time.
All right. And so once you get those quotes, you would be able to at least give us an estimate of what the lease amendments would cost. I'm assuming there would be a cost attached to the lease amendment.
Yes.
Our portfolio division.
Yes, we would work in tandem with our portfolio division, because they would have to reach out to the private entities who are leasing some of our buildings, and then it would more likely be negotiated.
I see.
Mhm.
Okay, well, I'm very curious as to how you would proceed, and have you thought about a time frame that you could maybe get the estimates together? And I ask that because, you know, the next budget cycle will be starting this fall.
Yes.
And once the cycle starts, it's very imperative that we have the information so that we can propose an expenditure in the next budget cycle. And those expenditure proposals usually happen February, March, you know. And so just want to know what kind of time frame do you need for the passing of a bill in order to do your estimates, I guess is a better question.
Well, we are currently working with OCFO now. So I don't want to speak for the team, but I assume within, you know, definitely before markup, we're working with them with a fiscal impact statement now. So it shouldn't be long. We should just be able, as long as we have the inventory of numbers of bathrooms and then some quotes, we should be able to have that starting point. So.
Okay, so how many bathrooms are in the DC government buildings that you have included? What's the number?
As of right now, I have an estimated number of roughly 1,200, estimated 1,200 right now, but that number is going to go up because we now have to consider the men's bathrooms if there are no gender neutral bathrooms.
Okay. All right, so it could multiply to 2,400 maybe? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Just trying to get a sense of where we're going with this. And then your leased buildings, do you have a number for that?
We don't at this time.
We don't at this time, but we can certainly follow up with your staff once we have all the numbers together.
Well, if you could provide that information to the committee, that would be very helpful. And I'm sure it would be helpful to, you know, the goals that Councilmember Pinto especially has set, so that we would have this, so that we can hopefully move the legislation forward. All right, well.
Yes, we will respond in writing for sure.
All right, well, thank you very much. And I will, is Councilmember Pinto still with us, staff? Yes. All right.
Yes.
All right. I'm going to turn this over to Councilmember Pinto. She will
Okay,
have
great.
some questions. Yes.
Thank you so much. I certainly do. And I'm sorry, I don't know what happened. I was moved as a attendee, but I'm here, and this is interesting discussion. Ms. Metters, to hear about the cost, because we received a FIS, as you may have heard me say earlier, from the OCFO, and they said that dispensers were $650 each. Is that FIS inaccurate, or is DGS not involved in that process?
So we're still getting various quotes on how much each of these dispenser is costing, along with, you know, our numbers for inventory, because some of the costs may have just included just the dispenser itself and not the installation.
Interesting. Okay, yeah, because the breakdown that we received from them had the dispenser cost, the installation, and then each year after that, the dispenser replacement and the material costs of the products themselves. And we'd be happy to send you that chart that we have from the OCFO and make sure that your perspective is included in that.
Thank you.
Thank you. So cost aside, how long would DGS need to install period products in all government buildings?
I mean, upon enactment and funding, we're ready to implement the mandates in the bill. I'd certainly have to circle back with the team, but once we have that, a couple months, few months.
Okay. We will look forward to working with you on speedy implementation, hopefully once this is passed and funded. In terms of enforcement, assuming this goes through, how should constituents contact DGS if they go into a bathroom in a public space and period products are not available? Would this make sense to go through 311, or how do you envision having the most effective enforcement?
I envision going through 311 as the first option. We would certainly talk internally if there are other methods in which they can reach us, but 311 would be a great start.
Okay. How many DC government facilities do not have a gender neutral bathroom?
So we are currently undertaking the inventory. We have never had to account for each of the bathrooms. We are going through the exercise now, but once we have that, we will certainly share with the committee.
Okay, great. You mentioned that updating current lease agreements was kind of something that you needed to go about doing before we move forward. What goes into that process and how long does that take?
So we would just have to work with our portfolio division. They would be the ones that would have to reach out to all of our private entities. But I could reach back out to them to see how long that would take. And then I'm sure once we have agreed verbiage, it shouldn't take long for it to be implemented. It would just take some time to reach out to each and every one of them to ensure that there are no issues or concerns.
Okay, I guess I just, in your capacity in testifying here today about this bill, are there other specific answers or steps that DGS has taken to ensure that the version we move forward on is the most accurate and informed?
We are currently doing our due diligence now, looking at other jurisdictions, best practices, just researching, subject matter experts as far as, how we move forward. So we're in the research process now as well.
Plan to reach out to the
and some of the advocacy individuals that were on this call will probably prove to be very helpful. I know they have shared just the more detailed specifics about products. So I'm sure they'll be helpful in this exercise as well.
Okay, well, thank you very much. And we look forward to continuing to work with DGS on getting this over the finish line. But thank you. And thank you very much, Chair Bonds.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I just had one question as we were talking about the dispensers. Will the dispensers that you're considering be the same size as the ones that are currently used in the schools?
I don't have an idea what dispensers they have, but I will certainly reach out to my DCPS counterpart to see which particular dispensers they use.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right. I guess I'm thinking about time in the past when the dispensers were small and it was a dispenser. So I just was curious because we have heard today, I believe, that we need to be considerate of the size so that the right size is available. Quite honestly, I see a basket with choices. And so I'm just wondering if consideration had been given to how do we dispense various sizes and then maybe even several products, you know.
It will certainly be part of our due diligence, again, to just look at what other jurisdictions are doing and see what
I
we can
see.
come up with. Mhm.
All right. Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you very, very much. And thank you, Councilmember Pinto. I guess we're moving forward on this. Thank you very much. And thanks to everyone who participated in today's public hearing for their contributions. If the public has any additional thoughts or would like to submit written testimony regarding the legislation, please email it to housing@dccouncil.gov, and it will be included in the hearing record, which will close on Tuesday, October 18th at 5 p.m. This concludes the hearing today. And with that, the time is 5:10 on Tuesday, October the 11th, 2022. And this meeting is adjourned. And thank you all again